there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing specific book recommendations based on certain prompts. I took inspiration for this video from the book recommendations tag, but I'm not going to be doing that tag in their questions specifically. So I will definitely go ahead and list the prompts or the specific recommendation prompts down in the description box below so you guys can skip around to certain ones. But before we go ahead and get on into the book recommendations, please consider hitting that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, as well as giving this video a like to throw my channel a little bit of support. The first prompt is probably the hardest, and that is, what is your favorite book? I get asked that all the time when I tell people that I'm a big reader and I love reading, and they're like, well, what is your favorite book? If you were to recommend me a book, what would you recommend? And I'm like, okay, well, what genre? I'm a big fantasy reader. Do you like fantasy? Like, what genre? But if I were to choose maybe two of my favorite books that I would recommend to everybody, the first one would definitely be The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I know that a lot of American kids at least read this in school, but I didn't read this book till I was an adult. This follows a 14-year-old boy named Ponyboy Curtis as he is navigating 1960s Tulsa, Oklahoma. He is a greaser. They are poor, looked down upon in society, and just kind of his growth as a character during some tragic events that happened in his life. I love this book. I love all the characters. It made me cry the first time I read it. And one thing I have noticed is that when I used to teach this, when I taught 8th grade, all the kids always really liked it. So even though it's from the 1960s, the themes in this book are very, very relatable, especially to kids that age. So definitely one of my favorites. And then the next one would be Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I just really love the themes in this book about the preservation and importance of knowledge and how what we do with knowledge equates to power per se. And I know that he drew inspiration from the book burnings that happened in Nazi Germany during World War II. It's just important for us to have open minds and to really, really understand the importance of educating ourselves and having knowledge. The next book recommendation is a guilty pleasure book, and for me that's always going to be some sort of romance, and I'm going to have to go with Emily McIntyre in general. I've read 3 of her books, and they are definitely not great pieces of literature, but my god, are they addicting. And the male lead in this book is always dark and brooding and violent, not towards the female lead, but like other people. And like, this is just the epitome of dark romance, and she just writes the angst between these two main characters, like the male and female. She writes it so good, and these books are page turners because she has a ton of romance in this book and there is smut in this book, but she equally balances it out with a decent plot. But it's definitely romance heavy and just dark guilty pleasure reads. The next recommendation is a book that you can read quickly. For this, I'm going to pick thrillers. I think thrillers are the easiest books to read quickly, and anything by Riley Sager. The books that I found the quickest to read for him were Lock Every Door, Final Girls, and Survive the Night. So these 3 books are super, super quick to get through, and the reason that I like Riley Sager and he's so easy to read is that he writes very in a way that's very accessible. It's not overly complicated. His plots, he releases clues slowly at first, and then they build up momentum until he gets to that twist at the end. And he just writes really, really engaging stories and just weaves an awesome mystery within each one of his books, and they're all different. So I've read his books in like 24-hour time periods before, so highly recommend. Next is to recommend an underhyped book. I'm going to go with a fantasy on this one, and this is Blackwing by Ed McDonald. I'm currently reading the second book, which is Ravencry, and if you like dark, gritty, grimdark type stories, then I would go with this first-person narration. It's also not crazy long. I do have a full review for this. I'll link it up in the cards if you guys want to check it out. But if you are someone who enjoys Abercrombie, I would definitely pick up Blackwing because I feel like the atmosphere is very similar, the tone's very similar. It's very dark and a bit bleak, and we have a character that's like Logan Ninefingers. Like, he can be violent, he can be strategic, he knows how to love at times. So very, very well-rounded main characters and a very cool magic system that has to do with moonlight. Then we have recommend the best book to movie or TV adaptation. This was so hard for me because I don't watch a lot of TV. I will start watching a TV show and then I lose interest by like the 3rd episode. I didn't even watch all of The Shadow and Bone. I didn't watch all of The Expanse. Like, I can't get into it. I did not watch Rings of Power. Like, and Wheel of Time. Oh gosh, don't get me started. It was horrible. So I just cannot like get into TV. So I'm going to actually go with a movie on this one. I'm going to go with Pride and Prejudice, which might sound really cliche, but the 2005 adaptation with Keira Knightley is definitely my favorite. I will watch it over and over again. I think that she does play a great Elizabeth. I really just like the whole story. Next is to recommend a book that can be easily reread, and I'm going to go with The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've read this a couple of times, and every single time it's just as enjoyable. We have the most endearing character in Bilbo Baggins. We have such a magical world that just draws you in. It's about a character who goes on an adventure, and he's bullied in the beginning, but he learns bravery, and he stands up against a dragon. And we have fighting. We have magical creatures, we have just an enchanted world, we have a wizard. So it has all of those traditional fantasy elements in an adventure story with really endearing characters, and I absolutely love it. My next recommendation is a book from a genre that I don't normally read, and I'm going to choose a book that is YA contemporary, which I couldn't even tell you the last time I read a YA contemporary book because I don't tend to read it that much, but I'm going to go with Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. So first off, Bridget Kemmerer is an author that I have read multiple of her books. I've read both her fantasy books and her contemporary books. And I'm going to choose this one because she addresses the theme of grief and dealing with grief very, very well. But we are following a main character who lost a parent, and she starts writing these anonymous letters at school when someone starts replying to these anonymous letters, and it turns out to be a classmate of hers. And they don't know that it's each other who are writing back and forth, and they start just bearing their souls to each other because it's anonymous. And obviously they find out who each other is, and it kind of shatters their entire world as they know it. So it kind of draws in like a really sweet romance while dealing with changes in family and grief and all of that as well. So it was a really well balanced book that was a bit sad and happy at the same time. So definitely recommend. Then we have a recommendation for a book or book series that has the best characters. If you are a character-driven reader, what would you recommend? I'm going to go with The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. There are so many books in this series, but we are following the life of Fitz or Fitzchivalry. And I chose this because Robin Hobb knows how to write characters so that they feel incredibly real, to the point where we could have a scene where we're just going through the day-to-day life of these characters, and I'm like totally here for it because they have become so real to me. And she knows how to write emotion. I mean, this is a first-person narrative, which I think helps, but like I was living Fitz's life. I was experiencing things through his eyes. And not only that, but she knows how to write relationships between different characters very well. Like Fitz and the Fool, one of the best relationships in a book series I've ever seen. Fitz and Patience, his stepmom type character, and Shade, his uncle, like all of it. The way that she wrote these relationships was just amazing and spot on, and is one of the reasons that I love this series so much. Very heavy character driven, but also very heavily plot driven. So Robin Hobb also does an awesome job with balancing the two. But if you start the series, you are 100% going to fall in love with all of these characters. Next is recommend a series where the world just draws you in, and I'm going to choose The Expanse by James S.A. Corey. And the reason I'm choosing this is because this is a futuristic sci-fi story that draws inspiration from our current world. So you can see where the author incorporated elements that we know while speculating about what the future may be like, and I just found it really intriguing. So we learn what's going on Earth, we learn why people left Earth, we learn why the asteroid belt was colonized, why Mars was colonized, and how all of these new colonies have to work together to create this new galactic alliance. And just like it was on Earth where countries were working together, but it's just on like a bigger scale. And personally for me, it just draws me in. Finally, we have recommend a book that will make you cry. For me personally, books don't really make me cry that often, so whenever I get this prompt, I tend to answer with the same couple books. And I'm going to go with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. The reason that this book made me cry is we're following Addie, who is immortal. She's been cursed by a demon. And not only is she immortal, but people will not remember who she is. She's not able to leave any sort of impact or impression on the world. For example, if she writes her name on a wall, it'll disappear. If she interacts with someone 5 minutes later, they won't remember who she is. They'll have no recollection of interacting with her. So the author did an excellent job with really expanding on the idea of why we need social interaction, why we need each other, why we feel compelled to be part of a group, and have that connection with another human, as well as loneliness, because she goes through this world for centuries by herself. And it really makes you think about your legacy as a person and what you're leaving behind, in your life. So I love the themes that the author introduced. There was some fantastical elements, there was a really good romance, and a book I highly recommend. Okay, you guys, those are some specific book recommendations. Let me know in the comments maybe some of your recommendations for any of these prompts, or if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in another video soon. Goodbye!